Hello Gunslingers! Welcome to another Eternal Deck Tech. So if you don't know, there's been a big change to the game recently, at least to a lot of very fringe playable cards, which I think is really fun. They started that on Valentine's Day, so February 14th. And we're going to be diving into a few of those cards over the next little while. One of the cards that I wanted to look at is specifically the Wisp style deck. So I've been sent a bunch of Wisp decks even before these buffs were announced, and they were really quite interesting and pretty, honestly, quite good. So I'm very, very interested in showing them off. Big shout out, of course, to all the subs and patrons who do send me all of these really cool decks to look at and check out. This is my own particular little brew based on like a blend of a bunch of things that were submitted in. And I wanted to shout out as well to inkgaming.com, our wonderful sponsor. They're down below. You can get a percentage off of your order if you just use our code. They do cool custom playmats and dice bags and all kinds of other cool gaming gear. And we're going to jump right on into this deck tech. So we're going to be looking at the buffed Wisps. And so we have a bunch of cool cards going on here. The idea is to get Wisps into the void and then get them back over and over and over and over. There's a few different ways that we can do that. You have Weary Spiteling is kind of the main thing that we're looking to get into the void. And what you can do with it once it's in the void is you can use Shadowlands Guide, because you can play a unit with 1 cost or less from your void. Thankfully, Weary Spiteling costs 1. And again, the ability for Weary Spiteling is the important thing. +2/+2 in flying is actually pretty big. Making it into a 3/3 flyer and then a 5/5 and a 7/7, like it scales real nice. And then Soulbringer. Soulbringer also now, this is the card that got the buff. It used to just say play a Wisp from your void, and that was it. And now it gives +1/+1 to those Wisps when you get them back. So if you get Tribute, you also get 2 Wisps from your void, which is pretty significant. That can do a lot. You can imagine it scales pretty well going from a 1/1 into a 3/3, going to a 1/1 to a 4/4, and then to a 7/7 is real nice. So there's some pretty cool things that you can do with that. We also have a few other 1-drops in Twilight Raptor, just because it's a nice early play that you can just put a lot of pressure onto your opponent with. We've got Xenan Lifespeaker, so that you get all of your units with lifesteal, so if you're playing against another aggro deck, you can race them really well. The idea here is that if you're just kind of, you know, passing each other over and over and over just on your way to work, trying to get to face, then you're going to have a big advantage by having lifesteal on your units if you can get a Lifespeaker to stick for a turn or two. Dusk is kind of self-explanatory, I think, at this point. If you've been playing any aggro decks that run any Primal at all, Dusk is almost always a key part of it. Berserk is insane. Nightfall is really good for aggro decks. It's bad in control lists because you're giving your opponent a card, but in an aggro deck, the idea is that that card doesn't matter because you're going to try and kill them before they get that card off. So you're going to be able to kill them before they manage to use all the cards in their hand. And if they're able to use all the cards in your hand, well, that's probably a game you were losing anyway. We have the Shadowlands Guide, like I said, to pull back all of the 1-drops. And then, of course, we have Crownwatch Press Gang, which draws 1-cost units out of your deck. So you can get Weary Spitelings and Lifespeakers and Twilight Raptors to kind of chain together and start this whole ball rolling. And then those Soulbringers to bring back multiple Wisps if you can, is the idea here. Then we also have some Paladin Oathbooks. And that's just so that it makes it so things like Weary Spiteling aren't totally dead. So, for example, if your opponent's got a little bit of life gain or they're on a fairly high life total already, you want to have some way to make them want to block Weary Spiteling and have it die, and you can do that with Paladin Oathbook. So you can just kind of make it more and more of a threat so that your opponent actually has to worry about it. We also have other ways to get rid of it too with Devour by just sacrificing it and drawing some extra cards. And another spicy little card that I'll get to in a minute. But we have some ways to return, besides Soulbringer and Shadowlands Guide, we also have Dark Return, so we can draw the unit from our void, give it +1/+1. We also have then Annihilate, so we can kill a unit with single faction, and Slay, we've kind of split them. We want to be able to kill single units, but it's nice for us to also have something that's like able to kill more than just single faction units. The advantage and disadvantage of each is this is fast and slow, right? And fast is really important right now. I've heard a lot of really good players say that they don't like Slay at all right now just because of how slow it is. And I'm kind of inclined to agree, but I also want an answer to some units like a Heart of the Vault or something where it can actually kill it off. Thankfully, there are a lot of problem units that Annihilate picks up, things like Sandstorm Titan, things like Moonstone Vanguard, things like Vara. You can just pop those with Annihilate, which is nice. But there are things that, you know, it's nice to have a Slay for. Even, honestly, something like the Recano Champion, because it's got Endurance, is a real big problem for a lot of decks. I mean, I don't mind just having a Slay for that, or something like a Deep Forge plate on it. Like, they get down a Red Canyon Smuggler, you can kill it with a Slay. So there's a couple things like that that are nice to have Slay for. We have the Devour, like I said, to sacrifice things. Another way to get things back is Haunting Scream. And then the Spice is Unfinished Business. So you give one of your units +5/+5, and then the really fun thing is that you sacrifice at the end of turn or when it deals damage. Normally a pretty big downside, but with Weary Spiteling and with things like Haunting Scream so that you can give it extra abilities, Unfinished Business can actually be used to our advantage. The other thing is that you'll notice your mind is going to say something about this card. You're going to immediately read it a certain way, and it's going to be wrong, especially if you come from Magic. That's my problem with looking at this. You look at it and you go, give one of your units +5/+5, and your mind tacks on until end of turn. It's not there. It's until end of turn because the unit dies, but it's actually a permanent buff. So if you put it on a Weary Spiteling on turn 3, slam in with it as a 6/6, you put it into your Void, and it's an 8/8 flyer for 1. Boom, Shadowlands Guide turn 4, you got them. You can do things like Haunting Scream after that as well. It makes really, really nasty Weary Spitelings insanely fast. So Unfinished Business is pretty cool. I mean, obviously it works with a lot of other things. You can imagine those kinds of things too with Berserk. Like, honestly, just like Unfinished Business, your Twilight Raptor, once you've drawn it off of Dusk Raider, attack in, and then you just get it back, and now the Berserk matters. Or like have it die and then Dark Return it with Dusk Raider, like play Twilight Raptor, turn 3 Unfinished Business, it dies, turn 4 you go Dusk Raider, Dark Return. Now it's, once again, it's an 8/8 flyer with Berserk. So you can do some shenanigans with this. You can definitely do some very, very cool moves. The market's the last thing that I want to go over. Well, and a little bit of the power base. I guess I'll go over the power base first. So I don't have 4 of each of the crests because you are an aggro deck, essentially. You don't want to have a lot of depleted power. So we're running a couple of banners, we're running 3 of the crests, and we're running 10 full sigils. That gives us a full 40% of our power as undepleted for sure. And I like having that because it's nice for us to get some of these down like pretty early, turn 1 or turn 2. You really don't want to have to be stuck playing depleted power because we're trying to be really, really fast, and having all of your power to be depleted basically means that you're playing a turn behind all the time, and that's no good for us at all. So it's a rough power base, and you might even want to put in more sigils, but then you start running into influence problems, so I'm not 100% certain where the mix is supposed to be. This is a nice start, but you might want to change it around. I wouldn't suggest running like a bunch of Waystones and things. Waystones are fine, although I don't know that there's one that you'd want. You don't necessarily need a bunch extra Nightfall, and I don't really want to run something like... It'd be very cool to be able to get off the Cabal standard, but actually having Cabal Tactics in your deck as another depleted power is a pretty big downside ultimately, I think. So unfortunately I don't think you can run any like the value kind of banner type cards, even though it'd be really, really nice to be able to run something like a Cabal Tactics. The market, we have Last Chance, so it's just one extra way to get things out of the void. We're using a black market, so we can't use anything that we're already using in our deck, so Last Chance is just kind of a nice extra way of doing things. I might actually be able to swap Last Chance because we have a lot of recursion just for like one of the banners actually. So put in an extra banner into your market just so that you can fix your influence base a little bit better. We have Vision of Austerity to get rid of Adjudicator's Gavel. I want to get to this in a minute. We've got Grindra's Choice. So like Adjudicator's Gavel or Avagraft is real bad for us. And there's not a lot of removal for relics in these colors, i.e. Burglarize and Vision. That's it. So Vision is, I think, a little bit better because it's cheaper. And then we've got Grindra's Choice that we can kill enemy units as another way, like just another fast spell. And also it's sometimes nice to like negate a harsh rule or something else like that. So you can pull a Grinder's Choice if you just want to protect some units. We also have Regent's Tomb, so we can give Swear Vengeance and Sabotage. Sabotage being nice against some of the Reanimator lists, right? If you can land a Regent's Tomb and sabotage them just beforehand, then you can kind of prevent them from having Grasp at Shadows, at least for a turn, and they won't be able to chain their Varas together. The last thing is the Secret Passage. I was debating on putting it in the main deck. It's another really cool thing that's just like Unfinished Business. So when it comes into play, you get one of your units unblockable. So you see summon, give one of your units blockable this turn. There's also the once per turn you may 2 to give one of your units unblockable and sacrifice it at end of turn. Exactly the same wording as Unfinished Business. So the first one, the summon one, gives the unit unblockable this turn, but you'll notice the second one where you actually sacrifice the unit doesn't. It keeps unblockable. So you can Secret Passage, play Weary Spiteling, make it unblockable, have it die, and then pull back an unblockable Weary Spiteling and just keep chaining that together over and over and over and over to have just this massive unblockable beater, which is pretty sweet. So Secret Passage is a pretty neat little like finisher in this deck, and also just a way of enabling more sacrifices of Weary Spiteling and powering it up. Thought it was a nice little inclusion here, so I've put that in as well. Don't necessarily want it in the main deck because it can be really dead. It's good in the late game, but it's really dead early, so it's a very niche card, and I thought that would be appropriate for market. You also do not want more than one, like multiples of it just doesn't do a lot, so it's a really good market card in my mind. In any case, I'm going to try this. There's a lot of things you could definitely shift around. Like I thought about, instead of running quite so many Twilight Raptors, I thought about running the Feral Spiteling, where you can drop some of your cards into the void. I think it's Feral Spiteling. Sorry, just a minute. Feral might be wrong. No, it's not. It's so it's one of the Wisps, though. It's the one-drop Wisp that does it. Spite Feeder, sorry. That's why I'm thinking Spite. But you do Spite Feeder, and the top player of your the player of your choice discards the top 2 cards of their deck, which doesn't sound that useful, but it plays into Tribute off of this. So Tribute says if a unit went to your void, it doesn't say from play, so you can actually mill the top 2 cards of your own deck, have a unit, and then get Soulbringer and immediately draw those units back. So that's something that you can do with Soulbringer. It's just like some neat little combo potential, so you could do that instead, and then it gives you a few extra Wisps to get back off of the Soulbringer anyways. It does have flying, so it's not the worst thing to have. It's just kind of like an aggro play early on. That's something that you could definitely do if you find that you're just running out of Wisps. I definitely thought, because I'm only running the Weary Spitelings, we might just want more Shadowlands Guide over Soulbringer. We'll kind of see how it goes. So far, I've been really happy with it, but we might need to shift those numbers around. There's a lot of play that you can do with this deck. You could definitely like up some of these numbers, maybe lower down on like some Haunting Screams or other recursion, like maybe cut 2 Soulbringers, 2 and 2, and run a little bit more in terms of Annihilate and Slay, run an extra Oathbook. There's a bunch of things that you can do with playing with the numbers. So this is a little bit of an early build. If you've got some ideas, I would definitely play around with it and test it yourself. And we're going to run some games and see how it does.